We now move on to the third and the last aspect of police and its functions. The second situation related to arresting powers and the procedure that a police officer has to follow. Sometimes before that or in pursuance of arresting power, a police officer is found to be using custodial violence or the use of force while they are trying to do their job. Now obviously in cases where they are justified because they are trying to do their job, they will not be punished. But unfortunately, in a lot of cases, in fact, the actual real life cases that we've seen, the use of force by police is usually found to be brute, unprecedented, rampant and indiscriminate on the person. Now, I've already mentioned about the standard of proof that is expected from the criminal law jurisprudence, which is that offense has to be proven beyond reasonable doubt, which means that when a person is in the custody of police, now whether he is even in judicial custody as ordered by the court, he or she is yet to be tried or the trial is still going on and has not reached its conclusion, which means the person is yet to be convicted. Hence, the police has no right to use force, custodial violence or any other thing which goes against the person's legal rights as well as human rights. There is a very famous case by the name of Neelvati Bahera versus State of Odisha, where the Supreme Court specifically has categorically stated that the police are not supposed to carry out any acts of custodial violence. But have you ever thought, why is custodial violence such a harsh reality? What gives police officers this right to go beyond their powers and sometimes cause deaths or extreme forms of torture in the form of physical punishment or even sexual assault to the people who are in their custody? Let me tell you, the problem definitely does not lie with the law. There are adequate provisions that provide for safeguarding inmates or people who are in detention from custodial violence. Starting from Section 29 of the Police Act mandates on the police officer that they are not supposed to use excessive force. Furthermore, Section 330, 331 and 348 of the Indian Penal Code also provides for punishment where somebody uses excessive force or tries to use it in order to either elicit a confessional statement or to discover a matter pertaining to investigation. 348 relates to use of force in order to get that information. So indirectly, these three provisions of IPC carry a substantive provision that punishes custodial violence. Furthermore, Section 25 and 26 of the Indian Evidence Act, which I mentioned in the first part, also indirectly disallows a police from using force, because 25 and 26 put together says that any statement made before a police officer is inadmissible in a court of law. It goes on to say that police officers are not supposed to use force while they are trying to investigate a matter and get the statement of the person. So as I said, the problem does not lie with the law. The problem lies, as I mentioned, with one, the lacunas that our Police Act suffers from, and secondly, and to a large extent, how it is depicted in our Indian cinema. For example, I've already mentioned about the movie Ganga Jal, which is an apt case of custodial violence. There are other movies like Dum, where the main villain or the antagonist is a police officer itself, and he uses his position and power to trouble and intimidate the hero of the movie. Furthermore, in another movie that I've previously mentioned, Drishyam, the police officer, being the commissioner in that scenario, is able to use her dominance and her position to forcefully order other police officers to disregard the provisions of law and violate various fundamental as well as human rights of the 4 members of the family that are detained. In another famous movie, Ab Tak Chappan, the movie is actually a benchmark for encounters, which again is a big problem with the use of police force or excessive force by the police officers. This movie, or rather how it portrays the number and the title of the movie itself, is suggestive that killing people in encounter is just a game of numbers, and it sort of becomes a competition before police officers as to who can carry out the maximum encounters. We also see the downside of this in another movie called as Jolly LLB 2, where the main police officer actually carries out a fake encounter because he believes that if he shows this to be a terrorist encounter, he is bound to get a promotion, and he wants to match up to his senior who has done more encounters in his life than him.
बहुत जल्दी है प्रमोशन की तुमको।
मैंने लाइफ का पहला एनकाउंटर आपके साथ ही किया था। किसी को मार के प्रमोशन भी मिल सकता है, ये मैंने आपसे सीखा।
In movies like Shootout at Lokhandwala and Shootout at Wadala, along with movies like Batla House, also show the disproportionate use of force by police. Movies like these go on to show, now they may have a basis in law in the sense that they tried to commit an encounter where they were not able to control the accused involved in the situation, but once they get to know that the other party does not have as much ammunition and arms as much as they have, they still are shown in the movie to use indiscriminate, disproportionate force in order to bring the situation under control. In movies like Singham, Dabang, Simba, the main police officer, who happens to be the hero of the movie, is shown to be regularly skipping charge sheets, flouting the law, beating police and other officers who are corrupt and other accused in the movie black and blue, just because he is a vigilante in the movie. Because he is the hero, he is completely disregarding whatever procedures a police officer is supposed to follow.
एक होता है पुलिस वाला, एक होता है गुंडा। हम कहलाते हैं पुलिस वाला गुंडा।
I understand that movies have a different purpose and they're not made with the objective of showing the perception of police. But we've seen in recent times a lot of cases and petitions have been filed against certain movies, web series, which tend to distort the image of a particular aspect, community, section or department in an adverse light. And that is what my point is. The moment we see movies like Dum, a police officer is shown as a negative person. He's a negative character because he's the villain. And therefore, his use of disproportionate force is not justified. However, the same exact thing, if Bajirao Singham does or Simba does in Rohit Shetty movies, we all tend to applaud and hoot the hell out of the cinema. There's a very popular dialogue in the movie Dabang.
पुलिस वाले को ठोकने का अंजाम पता है क्या है? 21 साल जेल और ठुकाई अलग से। और उसी पुलिस वाले ने अगर तुम्हें ठोका तो प्रमोशन अलग से और बहादुरी का मेडल भी।
This just goes on to show how police brutality is normalized through the medium of cinema. How something which is otherwise deplorable, otherwise a completely punishable offense for a common man like you and me, seems to allow police officers the use of this force in a disproportionate manner. To just bring you the context, recently the Bihar police wanted to show the movie Mardani to its police officers to tell them the standards that they are expected to match up to. But the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative actually wrote them a letter requesting them not to show that movie because they believed that such movies are not the right movies to portray the standards of police profession. Because movies like these tend to become too extreme in the use of force, and the ends that a police officer is seen to be going, even if it means disregarding the law, something like that will not be a good example to be set up as a benchmark for police officers to follow. The gap between what the police is expected to do and what the police actually does is massive, especially when you keep in context the Jamia Millia police violence, the murders of Jairaj and Benix in police custody, and various other cases of fake encounters that are still pending in the courts. It gives you an idea that the police in real life also does not like to follow the law. Movies tend to show exaggerated versions, but somewhere there is a connection between what the movies show and how it is in the real life. For a common man, it does become a good reference point and they start believing the portrayal of police in a film is an accurate portrayal. Obviously, a common man does not know the actual law. They do not know the provisions of CRPC, IPC or the Evidence Act to tell them that no, the police is also supposed to follow the law. For them, understanding and having a perception about the police is going to be framed largely from how they see it being depicted in cinema through all these movies that I've discussed, or it will be by real life instances where police is found to be misusing their power. We understand that it's now an imminent duty on filmmakers to show the other side as well. Having said that, I also want to bring it to notice that there are in fact movies which show a realistic portrayal of a police officer, his actual problems and the life that is expected out of him. Movies like Ardh Satya, Shul, Seher and also recently Article 15 are somewhat accurate depictions of how an actual police officer works. These movies do not glamorize and do not show these police officers to be Robin Hoods or vigilantes of some sort who will do anything under the sun just to bring the accused or the villain of the movie towards justice. They keep in mind that they're police officers but not gods who get to decide what happens to whom. Even though provisions add on to the presence of custodial violence and they seem to point out that it can be punished under the law, the problem or however the biggest apathy is that there is no provision analogous to that as to what will happen if there is a death caused in police custody. The police officer unfortunately will not be punishable under the offence of murder. The absence of such a provision highlights the apathy of our legislature to be able to come out of the systematic embeddedness of custodial violence that's become a norm for any police officer. It's high time that our legislature enacts upon or at least takes some action upon the 113th report of the Law Commission of India. Through this report, the Law Commission suggests the insertion of section 114B clause 1 whereby it will now provide prosecution of a police officer for cases of murder in case of custodial violence leading to the death of a person happens. This is something that will try to some extent limit and regulate the use of force by police. India is also a signatory to the UN Convention against torture and other cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment of 1984, but still fails to enact a law on the concerned provision. This together calls out for an immediate requirement of a law that tends to punish acts of custodial violence. If I as a person go out and watch movies like these, I tend to believe in the fact that that's how a police officer is. And that is why when in real life, police officers do carry out the same roles, sometimes not as heroes but as villains, then definitely we start to question our understanding. It is therefore expected out of filmmakers to take their role a little seriously the next time they depict a police officer in any role. Showing a little bit of jest, a little bit of humor is a good thing. But if that humor comes at the cost of undermining or rather showing the bad portrayal which further encourages actual police officers to do the same things, will definitely become a problem for any civilized society. The purpose of this video is not to criticize movies because we understand that they are made primarily for entertainment. But when we come across actual instances of excessive use of force by police, torturing common citizens or rather misusing their position and clout, we definitely have to understand that they tend to follow and take inspiration from their depiction in cinema. I hope you liked the video and learned something new. If you like the content, please like and share this video further. If you want to watch more such content, please subscribe to my channel Legal Banter and also press the notification bell so that you're notified the next time I post a video. Thank you so much for watching.